the breaking news we have, which is different. Once I posted this tease this morning, I heard from, I don't know how many of the Fozy and various others, but we do have a news alert and an exclusive one here's. I wouldn't stake my life on this, but I'd bet the ranch. We don't take these lightly, as you all know. When we do a one here's, so far, knock on wood, we maybe have missed the shade of gray, but we've never called it black when it turned out to be white. And this, of course, just a few days after the 170th birthday, which was on Sunday, of the oldest trophy in international sports, the America's Cup. Now, the venue is the big issue that everybody is talking about. We talked about it on Friday's show. We've talked about it for a couple of weeks. Will it be Cork, Ireland? Will it be Valencia, Spain? Will it be in the Middle East, notably in Abu Dhabi? Will the Cup be flying off to Abu Dhabi? I put this as my by the way, those of you who are Facebook friends will see I put a lot of this stuff up on my Facebook page, though sometimes just as a cover photo and as a tease, as many of you know. And by the way, I have I'm up against the 5,000 friend limit. Sorry, Facebook won't allow more than that. And you, however, can follow my Facebook page, and we got several thousand followers as well, so you can see all this stuff as well. I mean, you can see it anyway. But anyway, will the Cup be headed off to Abu Dhabi, which is a beautiful place? Some people say Jeddah, and some people say, in Saudi Arabia, some people say Qatar, or Qatar, as the local Qataris call it. Yeah. I have news, though, that I am reliably informing all of you today, and I start with this slide. Do you know what that slide is from, Julia? That is from the parades and Las Fallas, the big Rite of Spring celebration in Valencia, Spain.
Yeah.
When they make the floats, the hundreds of floats, and and then have the big crema, the big burning of it at the end of Las Fallas, the week of celebration. And this was from back in 2006-7, in that era, but I use that as a slide because Magnus Wheatley, who's watching, and again, we wish him speedy recovery from the bloody coronavirus, he ran a piece yesterday saying one horse, set the dial, stop the clocks, cows is out, Valencia is bust, the Irish bid is, well, all a bit Irish. Auckland is available, but unlikely, more's the pity. The America's Cup is going to the Middle East, as sure as night follows day. The sun is setting on the bidding war. The tide is out, and we can see who's been swimming naked. The desert is red hot now, Magnus Wheatley saying. Join the dots, trace the money, eye the sponsors, look at the desire, and everything points east, at least if you're in the UK. Football's grandest competition, couldn't resist it. That is the World Cup, which is in Qatar next year? Is that right? World Athletics fell all over themselves to get there. That's track and field, their World Cup. Formula One loves it. And the all-time ultimate money game, the Cup, just can't wait to get there. It's going to be stupendous. West Texas Intermediate, that's the crude oil, spiked above the $70 a barrel mark as the world rapidly exits economic decline, and that's game on for all manner of largesse and projects as the desert kingdoms vie desperately for legitimacy on the world stage. Art, culture, sport are the strategic pillars, and events like the Cup are the activation pawns in a much larger game. It's happening, and we'd better just get on with it. I'm not going to read his whole article, but he goes on to say he's been hearing for weeks now from various people about how the Middle East is on and the other venues are off, and that at Cows Week it was telling too, and he went on with several additional paragraphs in his usual fine writing on the Rule69blog.com. I commend it to you, as we often do, and Magnus is rarely wrong. However,
Gordon Smith said the Olympics, Magnus did say the Olympics was not happening.
Well, Magnus, as I said, is rarely wrong, but he's rarely in doubt.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Rarely. Look at Big Irvin as well. I'm going to turn your mic up, sir. So if you want to comment, jump in, and we'll come to you. Any comments so far?
Yeah, well, I've had a couple of approaches from Jeddah area about running a maxi regatta where they would pay to ship the J class or max and have a regatta. They're really, really keen to have a big glamour event down there. and they've got the cash. Whether they can persuade the owners to go down there, ship through the Suez Canal, not so sure. But it would be something that's an alternative to the Caribbean. It would have to be in sort of February for there to be a reasonable weather, cool enough and wind. I must say, I'm a bit surprised at Qatar. If you look at all the machinations and corruption that went on that got them the World Cup,
to say nothing of the slave labor that built the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, it's all very murky, I'm afraid. It doesn't appeal at all. But
well, let your heart.
Magnus is always certain. That doesn't mean he's right.
Let your. There's more, but wait, there's more. And as I said, Magnus is rarely in error, but never in doubt. We love his writing, but I can tell you all, this is the one here's. This is the venue for the next cup. The cup's next venue. Do you know where that is? Here's another clue. Do you know where that is? Julia?
I should. That looks like Egypt, but I mean.
Do you know where that is? This is the Cup's next venue. Or so I'm reliably informed from 3 different sources on 3 different continents. That, ladies and gentlemen, is 60 Center Street in New York City. It is the New York State Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry to say that, are you a member of the Squadron, by the way?
Yes.
So a member of the Royal Yacht Squadron. Well, here is the news, ladies and gentlemen. I'm reliably informed that sources down in New Zealand, not sources, but the big money population there, the business community and more, are acting against the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron and are going to court, saying that they have delegated their fiduciary duty to Emirates Team New Zealand, which, as we already know from the 2 court cases in '88 and in 2010, this is not permitted. And they are also going to act, Andrew, against the validity of the Royal Yacht Squadron, specifically Royal Yacht Squadron Limited, which was formed on February 28th after they were about to file as the challenger of record. And this is headed to court, sadly, yet again. But if you're opposed to the Cup going to the Middle East, you may be happy to hear about this. In fact, this comment just before we went to air was posted to Magnus's story, at the bottom of Magnus's story. Sorry, Magnus, you might be, and I don't know who Simon is. Sorry, Magnus, you might be a little off the money today. The strong story is that TNZ offshore venue bidding is about to come to a crashing halt as the bona fides of the challenger of record, meaning the Royal Yacht Squadron, is legally challenged for a couple of years in courts with serious money, ultimately to leave the New York Yacht Club as the legitimate challenger of record, given its 7 May 2021 challenge and an entirely different protocol to be agreed with the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. Ineos, this Simon character, whom I don't know who it is, has screwed it up big time with its 2 shilling paper company with no employees and £22,000 of member funds. No one is off to the UAE or anywhere else, so hang on to your camels. The odd number ACs are rarely pretty. Now, you'll remember the odd-numbered ACs are AC33 or AC25, was it, which was the '88 Cup. Let me get my notes here. 27, that was the Mercury Bay Challenge to San Diego with their challenge, which turned out went a cropper. And then, of course, AC33 was the CNEV Challenge, Club Náutico Español de Vela, which fell out of bed as a fake yacht club once the Cup went to court. And the New York Yacht Club has filed a challenge. And whether New York actually thought this was going to happen, I doubt it, because when I spoke with senior New York Yacht Club people this morning, they were not aware that this was happening, or so I believe. I'm not 100% sure that the Commodore didn't know this, but Commodore Chris Culver, as you know, back in May, filed a challenge. And if, in fact, the Royal Yacht Squadron gets knocked out of the box by the court as a valid challenger of record, it will devolve to the second challenger, which is the New York Yacht Club's challenge. They would become the challenger of record. The key thing here, I think, is less the Royal Yacht Squadron's challenge and more the fact that the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron has delegated their fiduciary duty to Emirates Team New Zealand, are letting them make the call, letting them choose the venue, letting them under this contract, by the way, a copy of which I have, letting them make all the decisions that the trustee would normally make. And we know from New York, you know, I've been in this movie twice before, won both of those cases, or was at least on the winning side, either running or advising the legal cases. And I think the courts are going to look, the court, the New York Supreme Court, will look askance at this trustee delegation of duties to ETNZ, and they may also look askance at the validity of the Royal Yacht Squadron Limited, or whatever it's now called, which was created to try to give legitimacy to their challenge and challenger of record. So that is what one hears reliably, I said, from 3 different sources, and those 3 sources I'm 95% sure have not talked to each other, so it's not a circuitous situation, that is in fact what is going on. Now, even if this only goes to court, there's one first, I don't know who's actually, I have a pretty good idea who's actually going to take it to court. The question is whether they will have standing. Once it goes to court, the court has to decide whether or not they have standing to challenge, to file the complaint. That could take months and months to decide that. Secondly, if they do have standing, and then this does get adjudicated, it could take, at least judging by what happened in '88 and in 2010, it could take years. The New York Supreme Court is not the top court in the state of New York. That's called the New York State Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court, which back when it was started in the 17-somethings, was the Supreme Court because it was the trial court and it was the top court. But now there's, above the Supreme Court, there's a Court of Appeals, the Appellate Division it's called, and then above that is a final court up in the state capital, Albany, New York. And if it goes to and through all 3 of those courts, it literally could be years before this is sorted out, if in fact it ends up in court. Now, what I think could well happen is that the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron will come to its senses and realize that it's made a huge effing decision. They have screwed this up to a fare thee well. They've screwed it up to a fare thee well, to keep it polite. And if they do realize that, they'll call back in the Emirates Team New Zealand and Mr. Dalton and say, sorry, we didn't have the right to delegate to you, our trustee, our fiduciary duty. We are, in fact, going to hold the cup here in New Zealand because these same men and women who I'm told form a moneyed aristocracy, to use the term of art that I was told, in New Zealand. And you say, wow, there's not that much money in New Zealand. Trust me, there's a lot of money in New Zealand, and even more so with each passing day. But that this group of men and women will fund a defense in New Zealand, and Mr. Dalton seems to want to fend that off in lieu of going to apparently the Middle East, where there is obviously a real pile of money. So I see the comments just flying off the phone here, but I wouldn't stake my life. This is a one hears. I don't have documents to prove this. In fact, I don't think anybody's gone to court yet. In fact, I'm quite sure they haven't. But one hears reliably, I'd bet the ranch on it, that they are headed to court unless the RNZ comes to their senses and pulls this thing back to New Zealand rather than putting it out to bid and letting the team, in effect, walk away with the trophy and with the event. The deal with if it does go at one of these other venues is, of course, that the hosting fee then will fund Team New Zealand. And the other thing, you have to wonder what's going on in the minds of Ineos, Team UK, and the Royal Yacht Squadron in general to put up with this. But again, the RYS, I'm sorry to say, has delegated their challenger record responsibility fully and truly to the Ineos Team UK. So with that, Julie, I'll stop, and let's go look at the comments. And if Andrew wants to make a comment, we can do that too. I'll start here at the bottom. Situation normal, snafu. Yeah, well, it's more than a snafu. Is that simple, Simon? That oil magnate Kiwi Dunphy is apparently a driving force in trying to keep the cup home. I don't know about that. This is shocking. Want to see these sailors go at it again ASAP. Well, it looks like they're going at it. They're planning to go at it in 2024. And I think Magnus is not wrong that absent this court action, it is headed for the Middle East, despite my fervent hope, that it was heading to the Solent, which at least is the home of the Royal Yacht Squadron. The FUBAR, yeah, it's Clark Chapin, and there's a lot of comments. Let's see what else. Ed Worley, this is the consequences for persons trying to profit from the cup and straying away from the spirit of the, well, it's not even the spirit, it's the letter of the deed of gift. Julio.
I just agreeing with you. That's all.
Okay. Who else? Ted Ryman, it's a legal company, so I can't see how the U.S. courts will succeed. Well, there's a simple answer to that, Ted. The same way that the new courts in New York were the place where the CNEV, Club Náutico Español de Vela, which was the fake yacht club that Alinghi came up with when they were going to defend after they successfully defended in Valencia 2007. They wanted to do it again in 2010, and they created a fake yacht club as their challenger of record called Club Náutico, CNEV, Español de Vela, CNEV. Where did that get adjudicated? The courts of New York. Why? Because the deed of gift as an instrument in the state of New York was deeded from the original owners of the Yacht America to the New York Yacht Club. Therefore, the courts of New York have jurisdiction, and that has been proven now several times, and that's why it will be adjudicated there. There may also be, I'm hearing, there may also be litigation in the courts in New Zealand over the trust, because this is contrary not only to New York trust law, where the deed resides, but also to New Zealand trust law. They have similar laws where a fiduciary, a trustee, cannot delegate their responsibility. We'll get a lawyer on here to explain. I'm not a lawyer, as you all know. That's why we get experts on like Andrew, because he's a doctor, to talk about his expertise, and we'll find somebody to come on soon and tell you all about this. What is the motivation behind these potential court cases, Stingray is asking? It's to keep the cup in New Zealand and not going to the Middle East. I suspect New York Yacht Club, if they now know of it, they will know about this. I briefed them this morning, senior members of the club, and I also did speak with Terry Hutchinson, who's not necessarily connected with New York anymore, but let's see how that plays out. Terry, of course, the executive director of American Magic. And I have spoken with nobody else, including with Andrew, prior to the show today. So normally, yeah, racing rules. I just hope, Jody Shields, and this, my friends, is why the America's Cup loses credibility to the general public. It's all about who has the deepest pockets. Well, that's part of it. RYS has an entity not contested previously. Why would they mess with that? Yarvahe is asking. Well, yeah, it's a good question, because they had already challenged, twice? Bermuda, yeah, twice. And then just before they filed as the challenger of record, and they started a new corporation, so they obviously were nervous about the validity of their previous challenges, which, frankly, if I'd been advising them, would have said, hey, carry on, Pedro Foiling Sailor, going to court is good news. I was worried the legal profession was financially destitute. This is a legal lifeline. Don't believe everything you hear, John Spangos is saying. Gordon Smith, I think it worth waiting a little longer on this topic. Well, we'll see. Bidding out the venue and having fake clubs as challengers is crotonic. Paul Homchick. John Spangos is saying, told you TFE, and to be fair, there were a couple foes, including John, who said this will never survive without going to court. And yeah, I think that's probably right. Okay, so that's the news. That's what I'm hearing. Andrew, do you want to say anything about this? I don't want to put you on
Royal Yacht Squadron Racing Limited was founded 7 years ago, I should think, nearly by now. So right. It was split off really early on when it was BAR before it was INEOS.
Right.
It's decided by the club, and I think this has happened with previous clubs that you'd know better. I think even when the Royal Thames were going to be a challenger, they basically wanted to separate the club as an entity from any financial risk with the cup, because obviously things going wrong with the finances of an America's Cup campaign could bankrupt a club very quickly. So that was the reason for setting up the affiliate company. But it was part of the squadron, but it was just separating the risk of bankruptcy of the racing up division from the rest of the club.
Yeah, and as I said, I think if they had just stuck with that, they might have been in better shape. But then to make this obvious change to a new company, and on February 28th, I think was the date, I can't remember now, but at the end of February, with the new paperwork, and we've got the paperwork and yada yada. But I don't think that's the main problem here. I think the main problem here is Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron's delegating of their fiduciary duty, of their trusteeship, or the appearance of that. And we'll see if and when this goes to court. But I fervently hope, as I've said, that RNZ sees the light and goes and says to Mr. Dalton, sorry. And that itself may cause a whole bunch of litigation, because these people have been out, Origin, whatever it's called, Origin Sports Group, have been out pitching this venue to a bunch of people now for months. But sadly, one hears, bottom line, to reconfirm that the Cup is headed back to court unless there is some a come to Jesus meeting in session down in Auckland. And I rather suspect the next Cup is going to, in fact, not be in the Middle East, not Valencia, not Cork, not even in the Solent, which would, to me, would be acceptable and good. But I think it's going to be back in Auckland, and there's a lot of people in Auckland. And this is not government funded. This is businesses and wealthy individuals who are coming to the fore to make this happen, or so one hears. Any other comments, Julia?
Just one sort of interesting note. Is the final court of appeal for New Zealand still the UK courts, House of Lords? And Hamish Ross says no, not for many years now.
No, I don't believe that is the case. And again, if there's litigation in New Zealand over, because they have similar trust laws, this could be litigated in New Zealand. It could for sure be litigated in the New York courts if somebody goes to court and is proven to have standing. And it could be New York Yacht Club themselves. Commodore Culver did file a challenge. I think at the time, as I said, I think it was a brilliant thing to do because it keeps them in the game.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
When he filed that challenge and announced it at the commissioning of Harbor Court.
Yes.
In May, maybe early June.
Yes.
And I said, well, this is a brilliant move because it keeps them in the game. If, in fact, Royal Yacht Squadron gets knocked out of the box, they would the challenger of record ship, if that's a word, would devolve to the next in challenger, which is New York Yacht Club.